In 1969, American astronauts Tom Stafford, Cernan and John Young were on the dark side of the moon. While photographing craters and sipping grape juice, they heard an otherworldly, organized noise coming from their headset. It lasted for 1 hour. For all these decades, the music remained a mystery until the beginning of last year, when this moment began to be popularized. There were versions that the sound arose due to radio interference between spacecraft. However, it seems strange that 3 experienced astronauts mistook ordinary interference for an alien phenomenon, calling it space music. On May 5, 1981, Soviet astronaut Vladimir Kovalenok looked out the window of the orbital space station, Salyut. While traveling around the station, he witnessed something inexplicable. Kovalenok spoke openly about what he saw at a press conference in Moscow when he returned to Earth. Many cosmonauts have seen phenomena that go beyond the experience of earthlings. For 10 years, I never talked about such things. You asked me what happened on May 5, 1981, at about 6 p.m., during the Salyut mission. At that time, we were over the area of South Africa, moving towards the Indian Ocean. I was just doing some gymnastics when I saw an object in front of me through the porthole, the appearance of which I could not explain. I was looking at this object, and then something happened that is impossible according to the laws of physics. The object had an elliptical shape. From the side, it seemed as if it was rotating in the direction of flight. After that, there was a kind of explosion of golden light. Then, after 1 or 2 seconds, there was a second explosion somewhere else and 2 spheres appeared, golden and very beautiful. After this explosion, I saw white smoke. Before we entered the darkness, we flew through the twilight zone between day and night. We were moving eastward, and when we entered the darkness of the Earth's shadow, I could not see them anymore. The 2 spheres never returned. Soviet and Russian professor Kirill Butasov, who worked at the Russian observatory in Pulkovo, collected a large amount of material about the amazing stories recorded by astronauts. He told about some incredible events that astronauts encountered. In 1995, at a speech at the International Institute of Space Anthropology, astronaut tester Sergei Krichevsky said that many astronauts experienced a strange feeling of reincarnation. One astronaut told Krichevsky that he felt himself in the body of a dinosaur. He also felt that he was on some planet. He moved with a herd, stepping over ravines and chasms. The astronaut described in detail his claws, scales and webbing between his toes. He also clearly felt the horny plates on his spine rising. And some felt that they were reincarnating into another person or even aliens. Professor Butasov also said that many astronauts heard warnings from God. Some felt that living beings were watching them in orbit. They even heard a certain being speaking to them in a quiet voice. The approximate meaning of their address was as follows: "Child, you have come too early, you should not come here. Believe me, because I am your ancestor. Return to Earth quickly and do not violate the laws of the Creator." In order for people to believe him, the being usually tells stories related to the families of astronauts. And Soviet astronaut Georgy Grechko told Professor Butasov, "There really are other intelligent life in the universe. They are more advanced in knowledge or technology than we are." Soviet astronaut Musa Manarov spent a total of 541 days in space in his career. But one day in 1991 stands out from all the others. On his way to the Mir space station, he managed to film a cigar-shaped UFO. The footage lasts 2 full minutes. He watched the object glow at certain moments and spiral through space. The famous American astronaut Edgar Mitchell, who received a Bachelor of Science degree in aeronautical engineering and a PhD in aeronautics and astronautics, landed on the moon in 1971 as part of the Apollo 14 expedition. Mitchell later spoke about his experience in an interview with British radio Kerrang. Mitchell told the host that while in the space capsule, he suddenly felt that something was watching him and could clearly sense that he had entered into spiritual contact with representatives of other intelligent life in the universe. Mitchell also said, "I have actually seen UFOs and aliens in space. That's why, upon returning to Earth, I immediately left NASA and began studying supernatural phenomena." In addition, during a flight in space, astronauts often hear mysterious sounds, although in fact it should be quiet in space. Soviet astronaut Vladislav Volkov once described mysterious sounds in detail. The Earth's night was flying below. And suddenly from this night came the barking of a dog. And then the crying of a child became clearly audible. And some voices. Volkov added that all this cannot be explained, but he felt that it was real. And with the already mentioned Georgy Grechko, a strange incident occurred in space orbit. When their ship flew over Cape Horn, where many ships perished in ancient times, he suddenly had a feeling of danger. It seemed that somewhere behind his back a tiger was hiding and was about to pounce. Grechko said that it was an eerie feeling that he barely got rid of. Some believe that cosmic whispers are the product of an alien civilization. They use hypnosis, penetrating the consciousness and subconscious, to convince people of their existence and expel humanity from the universe that previously belonged to them. Professor Butasov came to the conclusion that aliens have long known about earthlings, and know them very well. And here is another example. In May 1963, Major Gordon Cooper on the Mercury Atlas 9 spacecraft was making an orbital flight around the Earth. And suddenly he discovered that an object with a dark green glow, which looked like a disk, was moving towards the ship. Cooper believes that it was definitely not a satellite created by people, but most likely a UFO. And on June 3, 1965, the American manned spacecraft Gemini 4 was making an orbital flight around the Earth. As he was heading east of Hawaii, astronaut James McDivitt suddenly saw a spherical, glowing object flying above the ship, which suddenly changed direction at an angle of 40 degrees. McDivitt managed to capture the object in a photograph. Then on May 22, 1969, during the flight of the Apollo 10 spacecraft, the crew successfully photographed several UFOs. 2 months later, the Apollo 11 astronauts also photographed 2 unidentified objects. And here's another story. Dr. Musgrave has 6 degrees, is a doctor and a mathematician, and was in the Marine Corps. But he is also a NASA astronaut. Along with all of these accomplishments, he has told the most colorful UFO story we have ever heard. In a 1994 interview, he said of his experience, "I saw a snake in space. It's elastic because it had internal waves, and it followed us for quite a long period of time. The longer you stay in space, the more incredible things you'll see." And a completely inexplicable, amazing event occurred in 1991, a flight capsule with an astronaut from the United States, Charles Gibson, splashed down in the Atlantic. The most interesting thing is that he allegedly flew into space in 1963. Gibson flew away on the Gemini spacecraft in 1963. After entering orbit, contact with him was lost. NASA employees considered him missing. Moreover, the astronaut's ship soon disappeared from radar, which means he was not in orbit. But when the descending capsule was opened in 1991, it turned out that the man in it was alive. How could he live more than 20 years on a primitive spacecraft, the supplies of which were designed for only 6 months? It is known that after returning to his home planet, the astronaut underwent a medical examination and other necessary procedures. His capsule and he himself were carefully studied by specialists from various fields of science. Despite this, it was never possible to find out what happened to Gibson and how he managed to survive without food and water for 28 years in space. NASA reported that Gibson was in excellent health. Unfortunately, this only concerned his physical condition, as he remained completely disoriented. He did not understand how long he had actually been absent from Earth. His words remained unintelligible, he could not connect them into sentences. When researchers asked him where he had been for so many years, he answered only one thing: never and for nothing more. Yes, space presents us with many mysteries. Or maybe these cosmic mysteries should be looked at from a different point of view? Perhaps the astronauts encountered not aliens at all, but a phenomenon that has been known to mankind since ancient times and which we know as the kingdom of heaven? In this case, this version seems more realistic.